when I was first asked to do something, I thought, what can an old guy who's no longer working and whose total history was with big public companies have to offer to vibrant young women who are starting businesses? It didn't take me long, though, to realize that if there's one common denominator in every business, certainly from the leader's perspective or the owner's perspective, it comes down to leadership. So whether you're leading a Cal Tire, as Ken did for many years, or Finning, as I did, or you're starting up your own business, I do think you've got the same issues to deal with, and leadership, I'm going to try and convince you, is a way for you to leverage your competencies, your people, and build your business, grow your business faster. I'm going to break the talk into 3 chunks. First of all, I think I need to have you understand that you could speak for a month on leadership. It's a very complex subject, and I'm going to try and give you 15 minutes, a drink from the fire hose, try and leave you with 6 or 7 key things that I've learned over my 45 or 50 years are important, especially in the business world. But first of all, I'm going to start with the definition of leadership. I'm then going to try and stress the importance of leadership and then leave you with these 6 or 7 traits or behaviors or skills that I would advocate you try to develop in order to make your business successful. Now, there's many definitions of leadership, and you find many books and go to many seminars or whatever on the matter. But the definition I like is that leadership is the art of getting others to want to do something that you are convinced should be done. And to me, there's 4 key phrases there. First of all, it's an art. It's not a science. It can be learned. It can be developed. But it takes a lot of judgment. It takes a lot of insight. It takes a lot of wisdom and experience in order to be able to develop a management and leadership style that gets you results. Second key word is others. And the reason I think that's important, I don't think it matters a darn what you think you're doing as a leader. The leadership is in the eyes of the followers. So we may think we're doing a great job of leadership. It's totally in the eyes of your subordinates, your employees, your other partners in the business, whether you're doing a good job. Third key word is want. That is, leadership is about getting your team members to want to do what you want them to do. And that implies certainly that the traditional command and control style of management that most North American businesses have been run by for many years just doesn't work. There needs to be a more sophisticated approach if one wants to energize and engage today's employees. And finally, the other final couple of words that mean a lot to me are do something. So a lot of leadership sits in boardrooms, it sits in classrooms, it's all very esoteric. Leadership to me doesn't work unless others actually go and do something. Leadership, I don't think, is tightly defined. Leaders come in all sizes and shapes and all genders. And leadership is defined much more by emotional quotient, that is EQ, than it is by IQ. So, the importance of leadership. As I tried to say in my opening comments there, we think about time and money as precious resources, and there's never enough of them. I would argue from a business owner's standpoint, leadership is another resource. And as I tried to say, I think if you can lever your passion, your vision, your skills, where you want to take the business by having everybody that works around you share that, you'll get there faster, you'll be bigger, more successful than you ever imagined. And for those of you with few or no employees, you know what? Leadership works with customers, it works with suppliers, it works with your accountant and your lawyer. So good leadership skills can get them to do what you want. It isn't all just about employees. So what does Doug think are the key skills to leadership? And again, I want to be clear, this is a very abbreviated list. You'll find many longer, more extensive lists, but again, based on my experience, these in a business setting, I think are the 6 keys that really matter. And through this, I'm going to try and use some examples. I'm going to refer to Cal Tire in a couple of instances, because I think, obviously, when you look at the growth and success of that company, they've benefited from great leadership. But the first key trait is know thyself. And that was Socrates many thousands of years ago, and it's still right today. Great leaders, in my experience, know themselves very, very well. They know their strengths, they know their weaknesses, they know their moods, they know their effect on others. And they build a leadership style around themselves. They don't try and import something from somebody else. Conversely, I see many people attempting to be leaders, and they hijack something that they've seen somebody else do, but it just doesn't fit their personality. And it becomes very unauthentic. So, I believe that knowing yourself is really critical. Now, early in my career, I had the benefit of doing some psychological testing. And if you're not the kind of person that has great insight into yourself, just a helpful suggestion, take advantage of doing some industrial psychological testing, and you'll get a very good picture of your own strengths and weaknesses. Secondly, and I think this is on everybody's list, great leaders are able to inspire a shared vision of the future. And I'm going to alter this a little bit, because both Ken and I feel kind of the vision word is something that's a little bit overused. So I'm going to talk more in terms of bold goals or future state. And I think it's incumbent upon you as entrepreneurs at some point, maybe not right now, but at some point, if you want to move your vision ahead, you need to define the future. You need to communicate that with those around you, and you'll be surprised that they'll help you get there. One good example for me is right here in this province is our Premier, Christy Clark. I mean, I think a year ago right now, go back and look at what she did. I think she was able to come from right outside the race to winning it, because she had a vision for the province, a vision that others bought into, and that propelled her over the finish line. In terms of personal examples, and I know Christina's going to check my numbers, so you have to know that I'm telling the truth here, but 12 years ago when I took over at Finning, our stock price was kind of $10 or $12. It was mired in a very low position, and I guess I was looking for something to be able to get everybody aligned, all 13,000 employees, around getting this stock price up to something that was more reasonable. So I very impulsively announced that I was going to get the share price to $40 within 5 years, which was when I was normally due to retire. Now, this, I hope you think it was bold, because I'll tell you, the employees thought it was bold. Analysts thought it was bold. The board of directors was aghast that I'd make such a promise. And I have to tell you that we failed. We didn't get to $40, we got to $60. And we didn't do it in 5 years, we did it in 4 years. And if there's anything that's driven home to me the power of a vision or a bold goal on the part of the leader of the business, that was it. I think you have to take some risks. I think you have to put yourself out there and communicate with those around you really where you want to take the business. Okay, 4 more things, maybe not on the same level as that, but I think great leaders have a laser-like focus. We're all inundated with thousands of things, personal things, business things, but good leaders are able to separate all that crap and focus on the 2 or 3 or 4 things that are really important and knock them off. Along the way, I think they mainly have a very strong iron will, and as I said, they become undeterred, they're focused on their vision, and they are not easily kind of sidetracked. Somewhat attendant to that, 4th trait that I've noticed is good leaders face mistakes early on, and they course correct. And I guess if I were to look back on my own career, the biggest disappointments I have is that I never faced up to some major problems. And I guess that drove home to me that this is a very important trait. I think good leaders are able to say that was a mistake, put it aside, get on with it, no matter what it costs. And most of my mistakes in this area have been around people. Final couple of things here, get to engaging employees. One is encouraging the heart. Again, I'll put Christy Clark down as a good example. If you look at what she did, she spoke to the heart. She didn't speak to the head. She was all about vision. It was all about kind of a future state. And I think here, you know, and maybe Ken will talk a little bit about it, but I think Cal Tire has a list of 8 to 10 to 12 principles by which they run the business called the aims. And these, there's maybe one to do with profit, but most of this is about soft stuff. Most of this is about the heart. It's not about the head. But that's a very powerful device for, you know, enabling people and encouraging people to do what Cal wants them to do. So finally, the final thing, again, which is on most people's list of good leadership, and that is enable others to act. So get out of the way. I think good leaders are clear with what they want done. They make sure the employees are trained. They trust them, they train them, they trust them to some more, and they basically get out of the way and let them get on with it. And again, I would use Cal Tire as a good example. We can maybe get Ken to talk about it if he doesn't address it in his talk, but Cal has compensation systems for all the team members and the executive team that I feel are very, very enabling. They permit the whole organization to move in one direction. So, in conclusion, and again, 15 minutes doesn't do the topic justice, but I guess what I've been trying to say is leadership is all about getting others to do something that you want done. Secondly, I think from your standpoint as a business leader, as an entrepreneur, I think it's a fabulous way for you to leverage your business and move it forward. And the 6 key things I guess I've been trying to talk about are know thyself, be able to articulate and share a vision that engages your employees, maintain a laser-like focus, face up to mistakes, enable others to get on with the job, and encourage the heart. So that's it. Thank you very much. Look forward to answering questions later.
Hi, everyone. I'm glad it was Doug giving the talk on leadership, because I would say the same things, but I wouldn't say it nearly as well as you did. But the principle of getting people to want to do the things that you want them to do is one that is certainly I've believed in for many, many years. I find this a little intimidating. I almost said no. Doug was the one that approached me to do this. And he said there's this forum, which I had never heard of, and that we're isolated in Vernon, and so we don't know what's going on in Vancouver. And he said, would you like to, to give this talk? And of course I said, well, I'm not too sure. So I hesitated. And he immediately said, you have 2 daughters, don't you? So I would have said yes anyways, but for now we'll give the credit to my 2 daughters. But the other part that makes this intimidating is that you are all women, and I come from an industry that doesn't attract many women into the tire industry. So in preparation for this, I sent an email to our head of HR, Marlene. How many women do we have working for us now? So she sent me back this email. Ken, what the heck did she call it? Our gender diversity ratio is 8.5. I didn't know we had a gender diversity ratio. And the 8.5 is not out of 10. So we have about 5,000 employees, and I guess around 400 are women. And so during the question and answer period, I'm sure you'll be holding me accountable to that. I'm really pleased to be here, and I'm really impressed with what this group does, because in my experience in business, and most of that is just with our company, Cal Tire, we hardly ever came up with any original ideas. We copied everybody else. And that's how we learned how to manage our business as it grew and grew was to stay in contact with and use every opportunity we could through conference and the rest to just dialogue with other people in the business and in the business world and in the industry. And the sharing of information is so important because it's lonely running a business. And so I think it's great that you're doing this. It must be a tremendous resource. When we talked about what should I talk about, we started with employee engagement, and as we talked through that, I was trying to put this in a context where there would be some things that you would have in common with Cal Tire, and for sure employee engagement was part of it, but as we went through it, it seemed like every time I started talking about an aspect of that, our growth became one of the issues around employee engagement. So I thought what I would do today is talk about the lessons that we've learned through growth. And many of those lessons are around employee engagement. And I haven't been with the company the whole 60 years that it's been in place, but I have been since 1980. So I've had the opportunity to see what it was like when it was very, very small to what it is now. And as you've heard, we have about 5,000 employees. We have over 200 stores across Canada. We sell pretty much any tires that you would want to buy except for aircraft tires. And so passenger and light truck, commercial, and off-road. And then we also have a mining division that services mine sites around the world. So we're in 19 different countries worldwide, and that's part of our business is actually growing quite quickly. So the lessons learned are our lessons. They're not necessarily your lessons. I don't know how much of that you can kind of apply to your business, but I'll just talk about the things that we've learned as we've gone through this journey of growth over the last long time. So the first lesson learned is actually a question, and it's growth. Should it be an objective or it should be an outcome? Is growth the objective, or is it the outcome of what you do? So if I can go back to when we started, Tom Ford, who's my father-in-law, and he's passed away now 2 years ago, he started the business in 1953 in Vernon, and he had a partner, Jim Loughy. And they actually bought a gas station. So they're pumping gas, and they're selling tires, and they're doing mechanical work, and they're finding that they can actually make more money selling tires than pumping gas. So they kept doing all of it, but concentrated on the tire business. And as you can imagine, starting a business in 1953 from guys that had just come back from the military, they didn't have a lot of money, they had to borrow everything that they had to put into this business. So they worked really, really hard through that first year. And at the end of the year, they added up what they made, and it was $25. And when I talked to our central training classes, I asked the question, is that success? Well, what was happening during that year, aside from the hard work, is they were finding customers that were underserviced. And so they were totally dedicated to customer service, and they developed customer loyalty. And at the end of the year, they only had made $25, but in my mind, that's a spectacular achievement in the first year of business, and I'm sure you'd all agree. But they also had customer loyalty. Here's where the customer loyalty came in. The following year, the second year they're in business, one of their customers who had a logging operation in the Cusp, which was about 2 hours away from Vernon, and Tom would do the service calls when his trucks had blowouts and the rest, 2 hours there, 2 hours back. This customer said to Tom, why don't you put a store into the Cusp? And Tom said, okay, which is a little different than how we approach it now. And so he went from 1 store to 2 stores. We doubled our size in 1 year, and we've never done that since. So we had success around profit and customer loyalty that led to growth. And the first challenge with growth, having that second store, was hiring people to run the store. And so by hiring the right people to run the store, you create more success. And with success, you can take advantage of opportunities for growth, and it requires you to hire more people. And it's that circle that was happening in 1954. It's exactly how we see our business today. And so, is growth an outcome or an objective for us? It really never was an objective. Tom never got into business and said, you know, I want to be coast to coast and I want to have sales of $1.5 billion. It was not that. It's, I'm going to work hard. I'm going to create customer loyalty by giving them the things that they need at the right price. And I'm not going to take money out of the business. And that will allow me to take advantage of opportunities. And so that started in 1954, and we're pretty much the same today. And that is positioning ourselves for opportunities allows us to grow. But we've never actually had growth per se as an objective. Second lesson, you can't do it all by yourself. Tom started with a partner. Had that partner for 20 years and then bought him out. And then in the late 70s, the company started to grow again. It was just before I joined in 1980. We had about 20 stores, 200 employees, and it was too much for Tom to try to manage himself and to fit in with his golf games and other things that he was interested in. So he needed help. And with some assistance from a really good friend of his who was a retired senior partner at KPMG, we came up with a fairly unusual corporate structure, and that's a corporate partnership. So they set that up in the late 70s. I joined in 1980, and I'll just try to describe it as to what I came into. So I formed my own company. My company became a partner in the partnership. I was given units in the partnership. Those units defined a percent of the profits that would go into my account. I had a capital account that was together with all of the other capital accounts. And the requirements around the partnership units were that when you retire, you take your capital account with you, and the units are eliminated, and there's no goodwill involved. So it's an accumulation of profits that stay in the business to allow the business to grow. It's modeled after professional partnerships, and it started, as I say, in the late 70s, and we still have it in place today. We are in our third generation now of partners. So all of our senior management team today, there's 6 of them, are partners in the business. And this is a pretty big subject, and you may have some questions afterwards, but I'll try to summarize the important aspect of this. There's 3 things that it does for us. Our company always has been and is still owned primarily by the Ford family. So, but they recognize the need. Tom recognized the need, and the family does, that the family can't run the business themselves. So what you want is your senior management team to be totally aligned with the shareholders. So through this corporate partnership, most of the personal wealth of the executive group is invested in exactly the same place that the shareholders' wealth is. It creates a culture of teamwork. At the senior management level, everybody is a partner. And although there's varying amounts of units, depending on when they come in, the concept is still, we're going to work as a team. We're going to work as a partnership. And that started with Tom and his willingness to delegate decision-making to the team around him. And he felt that his job was to make the team stronger, not to make all of the decisions for the team. And so to this day, the concept of partnership really reinforces the senior management team working together as a team without a lot of reference to who has the most authority. And the final thing that it does for us, and particularly today, is it allows us to attract good people in at the senior level of our business. And at the senior level, we want entrepreneurs. If we had a conventional company and we wanted to sell shares, we would somewhat restrict ourselves to those that could afford to be able to buy in. That's why the units are given. The alternatives today, though, for capable people that like ownership is either as yourself to run your own business or stock options. And so with our partnership structure, we can offer something it's an unusual form of ownership, but it's real ownership. And it's allowed us to attract people that otherwise would not come for a conventional salary and a bonus. So for us, a key driver of our long-term success has been the delegation of authority to a team of executives and for them to have some skin in the game. Third lesson, and Doug referred to this one, unless values are written down, they might not be understood. In the 80s, we were expanding very, very quickly, and almost all of our expansion was through acquisition. And up to maybe the middle to late 80s, our company was small enough that everybody understood our values. And of course, back in those days, you didn't use the word values. You used the words like our way of doing things, or the Keltire way, or, you know, it's just so complex how we conduct ourselves, but we knew each other well enough that it was sort of understood. This is who we are, this is how we did things, this is why we did things. As we expanded, though, we started having some concerns, and we did a couple of large expansions into Alberta. And these were dealerships that we bought two of them that were quite sizable. And we did the usual thing. We bought the uniforms and dressed, you know, they looked like Keltire. We put the signs up, it was Keltire. But we couldn't figure out how come they weren't acting like Keltire. And, you know, we weren't really that smart, because it took us a while to figure out that they just didn't know how, because we hadn't taught them. About the same time, we had happened to go to a seminar put on by a fellow called Dr. Deming, who talked about the value of giving direction to the organization, exactly as Doug had talked about, articulate your vision, and we realized that we hadn't done that. So the senior management team, there was 8 of us at the time, we sat down and challenged ourselves. Can we put on one piece of paper, not a mission statement, but can we put on one piece of paper the things that we're trying to do that represent us when we're functioning at our best? And so we called them the aims, because that's the direction. But here's the first lesson, that these are a group of guys that have worked together for a long, long time. It took us 6 months to agree on what the most important values were. And so we'd never done it before. And the fundamental lesson for me on that exercise was, unless you write it down, you don't know whether people understand or agree. So for our little group, it was a great exercise. After 6 months, we did come up with the 7 of the aims. Then we took it out to the organization and put it up on all the walls. We had evening meetings. We tried to make them real. And I thought back then it was just an exercise in communication. I'm astounded today how important those aims have become. And particularly for the generation of people that we're hiring now, they want to understand, what is the culture? What are the values? And they're skeptical. Yeah, it's on the wall, but we've all gone into places of business where the mission statement's on the wall saying, this is what we're going to be, and it's not quite the same as when you go up to the counter and you have a different experience. We've tried really hard to make these things real. We hold ourselves as part of the senior management team accountable for conducting ourselves in accordance with these values. We expect everybody to understand them and to hold them as standards. And they have become one of the most valuable documents that we have in the company because the whole organization holds everybody else accountable for conducting themselves in accordance with this. And when you don't, you're immediately seen as a bit of an outlier. So for us, writing down the things that we felt were important is probably one of the most important things we did back in the 80s, because it's helped to define us and it's helped to create a framework so that new people coming into the business can understand what are our values. Number 4, share the successes and align your team. My background was construction, and in the construction business, we all had pension plans. So I come to the tire business, an industry that doesn't pay very well, and at that time there wasn't a lot of upward mobility, and after a number of years, I could see that we were going to have a problem. At that time, I did the calculation, the average age of our employees was 26 years old. So it's not like we had a looming retirement problem, but I could also see those that spent their career changing tires were going to wind up at the end of their career without any money. And we, because of our values, would probably have to write a check. Otherwise, we'd feel that we hadn't carried out our responsibility. So I thought, we better deal with this now when they're still 26 years old rather than when they're 56 years old. The second thing that we could see is in our stores, there was a misalignment of activities. The store managers and the assistant managers were given annual bonuses based on profitability. Everybody else in the store was on a monthly labor incentive. So the more labor we sold, depending on the cost of labor, that would trigger a monthly incentive. And so you had the manager and the assistant manager with the big picture going in one direction, everybody else with a bit of the picture going the other. So this is a long, long story, and I'm going to make it really short. What we did in the 80s is we introduced in stages what we call our 50-50 partnership. So we take 50% of the profits of the store division, and we use all of that money to fund a group RRSP that everybody in the company, whether they're in the store division or not, can qualify for. To get on that, they have to themselves contribute 2% of their income. So that's 15% of the store division profits. We also take then 35% of the individual store's profitability, and we share that 35% with the people in those stores. And 2/3 of that they get in cash, and 1/3 they get to fund their RSP. So this requires us to have full disclosure P&Ls of the store division and all the stores. So everybody in our company knows how much we make in the store division. We have other divisions like retreading and warehousing and mining and the rest that we don't do that. But in the store division, we felt we needed that investment to get total alignment. And so we've done a number of things through that. I feel we've carried out our responsibility to our employees to make sure that they can have a decent retirement. Number 2, we're sharing the successes because it's the guys in the stores that create the successes. And number 3, and maybe this is almost as important, it's changed the management culture within the stores, where before the manager had to make all of the decisions. Now, the manager becomes accountable to his team for the decisions that he makes because it affects everybody's profit sharing. And so every month, the P&L goes up on the board. Everybody in the store sees the P&L. They all get involved in all of the decisions. And so for us, it's been one of the more important things that we've done. And how I think of it is we have decentralized the drive to profitability. It's very ineffective for somebody in Vernon to say, we need to be profitable. it's very, very effective for the team in the store saying, if we can be more profitable, we're all going to gain by it. Last one. The characteristics that make you successful can also make you weaker. To me, this is a really interesting one because I'm so conscious of what we've gone through as an organization, challenging ourselves to keep up with our growth. Most of our growth has been through acquisitions, and through that, we would buy typically owner-operators. And that's really good for us because there is no tougher competition than an owner-operator. And the person that owns the business and is behind the counter every day and can keep his hands on everything, they're going to be really, really tough and likely successful. And so I just have a ton of respect for everybody in this room because that describes you. We would acquire businesses that were more profitable than we could make them because of the owner-operators keeping his hands on the tiller and being there every day. But then we had some interesting experiences as we grew and our acquisitions got larger. We acquired a number of small chains that had been started by that owner-operator entrepreneur. And in almost every case, and these would be anywhere from 3 stores to 12 stores, in almost every case, we were acquiring them because they were failing. And what we learned through that is there is a completely different management style required as a business grows, particularly when it starts to decentralize and has more than one location, than if you can have everything that you can touch and feel and control. And these guys that were absolutely unbeatable when they had 1 store, when they got to be 3 or 4 or 5 stores, nothing seemed to work very well. And so it was a little scary for us to come to that conclusion because now we start asking ourselves, is our company outgrowing our ability to manage it? And I still ask myself that question because, Doug's used to bigger numbers than we are, but we're just small town guys and our company's getting pretty big and we've never done this stuff before. And so we are looking inward as, do we have the right management style given the size and the growth of our company? Because I'm very much aware of that lesson, that the things that made you strong initially can start getting in the way if you grow your business past what that management style is appropriate to. So those are, somebody had asked for 5 points, so those are 5 lessons. There's quite a few more than that, you can be sure, but those were 5 that for me were pretty significant in my career. They do apply just to us. They may not apply to yourself, but it may generate some questions or some thoughts in your mind as to is there something there that you could use. So I'm done. Thank you.
I'm just interested in the profit sharing model and the challenges that you faced in the stores. You're saying that your management and your people on the floor or in the shop are all, can all make money. Does that pose challenges in terms of, I guess, HR? Did that pose particular challenges in them being questioned or disputed, or and how did you overcome those?
Yeah, I can remember when we put this in place and we had some managers that said, that's BS. I'm not going to be accountable to them for my decisions. And there was that autocratic style of management that was pretty typical. And it's not like this program was aimed at getting rid of that, but we could see that as one of the side benefits. And so, yeah, there was some discomfort from managers of even letting their employees or their team know what their profit and loss statement looked like each month. That, that's private. We were uncomfortable with that too. But it didn't take too long for most managers to understand that even though somebody's out back changing tires, seems like kind of a low-level job, they still have good ideas. And when they start to understand the business by learning how to read a P&L, it's amazing the great ideas that come out. And so it's like I said before, you know, we didn't come up with, I don't think, any original ideas at all in our company. We found them elsewhere, and it's the same for a manager. You can't expect one manager to come up with all the great operating ideas. One of the problems that it has produced is too much of a focus on profitability. And that's why the aims are so important. There's a tension between the aims, that this is, you know, to do with customers and suppliers and team members and the rest, and how we're going to conduct ourselves. There's a tension between that and the drive for profitability. So our challenge is to keeping that balance.
When you were talking about leadership, how do you get honest feedback from your employees and your peers about your style and how effective it's being? Because often, you know, they don't want to give you that hard feedback.
Well, I think that's an excellent question. There is a sophisticated 360 feedback mechanism that many, certainly larger public companies use. A lot of this is very scientifically put together so that the feedback you're getting, you get real, honest feedback as to what your employees feel about you. At Finning, we've used that for many, many years. I can tell you it's bulletproof. You get authentic data about it. And it's from your boss, it's from your peers, it's from your subordinates. So that's one mechanism to use. And I think a lot of this can be done online these days, and it's not as expensive as it used to be.
Would you suggest it be anonymous or obviously for employees?
No, from my recollection, you record whether you're a subordinate or a peer or the boss who's putting it in. But it's what the person gets back, what you get back is a blend of everything. So you get 360 view of how you're coming across. And it's very, very introspective. It gets into areas that of your personality and just, you know, how you're coming across. It's quite eye-opening. Now, if you don't want to go that route, then I think it's a question of really developing a trusting attitude with everybody around you. I mean, I think at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. I think many of the things that Ken talked about in terms of their 50-50 program probably drove very honest conversations between the guys changing the tires and the boss in terms of, you know, new ideas and what should be done. So, but in the absence of that, there are these mechanisms that work very well.
Maybe I could add to that, because that's a subject that I think is really important, because the best mentoring I've had in my career has always come from people that report to me. And when you're a business owner, you're not reporting to anybody, and so nobody's going to do your performance review, so who's going to tell you what your weaknesses are? And so I'm a great believer in that, and as Doug said, there's systems that will help you do that. What I've learned, it's so much of it is how you ask the question. And I don't know whether you do performance reviews on your employees, but whenever I would do a performance review on an employee, at the bottom of it, I would ask for feedback, and I learned that there's not much point in asking, how am I doing? Ask your boss, how am I doing? Because the answer will be, you're doing just fine, boss. And please don't ever ask me that again. And so what I started doing, and this can be either in a performance review or in any context, but I started with performance reviews, and they knew this was coming. At the end of it, now I want you to give me just 3 things that in your mind I could do better as far as either supporting you or carrying out my role. And because I found that just by asking for feedback and asking how I'm doing, almost nobody has the courage to be honest unless it's like a 360 anonymous form. But for a smaller business, I would suggest you just start talking about feedback in that you're looking for ways to improve, so just give me 3 things that I could do better. And if you ask that enough, and then when you get one of those three things, be careful how you react. Because you might learn some things about yourself. And by doing this, I wound up with maybe half a dozen people in my career that were subordinate to me, that gave me just absolutely great feedback. They were the ones that would tell me when I screwed up and what I wasn't doing that I should be doing. And it's really valuable if you can create that culture in your businesses, because it's a lot of people won't do that because they feel you're going to look weak, that as the leader and as the manager you have to be strong and somewhat invincible. But I've found that people will trust you more if you admit that you're not perfect and that you do need some help. Great question.
Did you find there was an age or a stage where you, as a leader, you sort of felt like, because I think leadership's a journey, not just like I get there. Did you find where you're like, oh, I'm starting to feel more comfortable with my leadership style?
I guess the big aha for me was when Tom stepped down and asked me to become president. And I would get up in the morning, look in the mirror, and wonder, how the heck did this happen? Because I was always interested in leadership, but I never really thought I was a great leader. You know, the great leaders are the ones that you read about, and the charismatic CEOs and that sort of thing. And I'm not sure what caused me to kind of rethink that, but for me, it was accepting within myself that I can only be who I am. And there's not much point in apologizing if it's not good enough. All you can be is who you are. And sometimes I would try to be somebody else that I thought was kind of the leader that I wanted to be. And it doesn't work very well, and it's really stressful. And so I found that I was performing at my best if I was just myself. And this fellow who you know, Archie, who's he's the charismatic leader who's since retired. And there's something we used to say about Archie when he would make mistakes, because he would make lots of them. And he'd make them very boldly and loudly, but one of these guys that just could connect well with people, and when he made a mistake, he would immediately forgive himself. And so I learned to forgive myself my mistakes, get comfortable with who I was, and but also, as Doug said, you know, that introspection and being aware of who you are can sometimes get in the way of a good leadership style, and I can tend to over-control. And so I have to keep the brakes on as much as I can on that. But at the same time, you need to be true to who you are. Doug, yes?
Yeah, I'd answer a little bit differently. I guess, you know, I'm a hired gun. I'm not a entrepreneur like you are, but I had the benefit of taking an MBA in the 70s, and that was when a more modern management style was being taught. So I had the good fortune of, I think, learning correctly what a good participative management style was like. I also was fortunate enough, as I think I said in my speech, that the company I was with wanted to try out psychological testing. So I volunteered. I got a very good report on myself. Interestingly, Ken and I both took engineering together. When I got back this data, it said I had none of the likes or dislikes of an engineer, which I sort of figured out on my own, but it just proved that this was good stuff. The reason I took an MBA. And then when I was 27, I was, good Lord, I don't know why. I had long hair, and I was given the job of going to the prairies to run prairie operations, 500 people, lumber yards. And I guess I just learned baptism by fire. I was thrust into it. I had no other way to lead than to count on those that were around me. I had to involve them. I had to work on group and team decision-making, much as Ken has stressed for Cal Tire. I think getting that success early on, and I guess I would urge each of you to, I mean, you were, by doing what you're doing, you're plunging yourself into the deep end, which is great. But you'll learn, you'll find out what works, and then as you grow, you'll gain confidence. So when the next big job came, I had the confidence, and on and on. And I'd say throughout my career, I was just thrown into jobs where, quite frankly, I was way over my head. and I just had to count on the experts that were around, and that threw me into a management leadership style that said, you know, engage and count on others.
Speaking of the psychological testing that they did, do you know what it was?
Well, it was a whole battery of tests. One was strong interest inventory. The other was Myers-Briggs. There's a whole batch of them now. I think they're all online. I think you can do them very easily. But it gives you invaluable information. And I mean, it rates you against your peers in industry. You get a sense of whether you're good, bad, or indifferent. And I mean, that was invaluable. I knew what I could trust, and I knew where I better get some help. So, for example, I'm not good on details, okay? I sort of knew that, but I didn't realize how bad I really was. So, you know, but I knew I was real good on other things, and I had to get people to back me up on the weak areas.